All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking some time to join us this morning for a webinar. My name is Brandon Murray, and I am the Director of Member Communications for the Pennsylvania Motor Truck Association. I just want to address a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. We are recording this webinar, so we will be providing the video link to all of those that registered later this afternoon when we have processed the video. And if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please type them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We have with us today Amara Charles, who currently serves as the Marketing and Outreach Manager for NIC Federal. She is responsible for marketing and outreach efforts to help motor carriers and drivers understand the value of using the pre-employment screening program. Sorry, my phone rang. I will now turn the floor over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Brandon. It is a great blessing and opportunity to be with you all today. I won't be before you long. I am excited to share about the pre-employment screening program. And I just want to make you all aware, normally as I present, I like to keep the attention more so on the PowerPoint that is shared with you. So you will notice that my face disappears, my actual face, but I do have a screenshot available for you to look at as I am presenting. But the focus primarily will be on the presentation. And towards the end, I will turn my camera back on so that any questions and anything specifically that you would like to ask that I can provide more insight and information on, I would be happy to answer. More so face to face. So I'm going to turn myself over now to the presentation. Bear with me one moment as I share my screen with you. Okay, I am hoping that everyone is now able to see my screen. Awesome. So thank you again for the opportunity to share with you all today. I'm very excited to have the opportunity to share about the pre-employment screening program. And if I was before you, I would of course ask, if we were face-to-face rather, I would of course ask, who has heard about the pre-employment screening program, who is making use of it right now, any benefits and things that you would like to share. And unfortunately, we are not able to be face-to-face, but we are at least able to meet virtually. So I do hope that the information that I share today is of most helpful to you all. And again, if there are any questions or concerns, please feel free to ask towards the end of the presentation, or feel free to send me an email as well. So let's get into it. What is the pre-employment screening program? Well, we recently celebrated our 10-year anniversary, and the pre-employment screening program has been around since 2010. It is an FMCSA initiative. It provides motor carriers with the crash and inspection data on potential new hires. Psp data may be viewed by a potential employer during the hiring process only. The industry requested that background screeners gain access to Psp, and FMCSA responded, and therefore Psp 2.0 was made available. In accordance with the Fair Credit Reporting Act, Fcra as it's known, before a potential employer or their background screener requests a Psp record, they must first get authorization from a driver. Psp is a voluntary program, and drivers may request their records at any time. So why Psp? Well, Psp originated out of the Transportation Bill, better known as the Safety LU, which was signed into law in 2005. The Safety LU Act authorizes funds for federal aid highways, highway safety programs, and transit programs, and for other purposes. It may be cited as the Safe, Accountable, Flexible, Efficient Transportation Equity Act, and has helped propel the Psp program forward. The main goal is to make our nation's highways safer, and Psp allows employers to make better hiring decisions. It also helps to improve data quality by therefore giving drivers access to their own data, which allows them to fix any inaccuracies. And also like a credit report, where you may want to know what your records entail, and if there are any inaccuracies, we can fix them, meaning Psp monitoring is very much of the same. And if a driver or motor carrier is aware of the discrepancy on a Psp record, they can submit a request for data review or RDR through our data queues system. So let's now talk about the data. Psp data comes from the roadside. Law enforcement records crashes, inspections, and associated violations, and states are required to send that data to the federal government. FMCSA stores the crash, inspection, and violation data in the Motor Carrier Management Information System, better known as MCMIS, and approximately every 30 days, a MCMIS snapshot is uploaded into the Psp database. The Psp record includes 5 years of crash data, 3 years of inspection data, and not preventable crash data. And since Psp was launched in 2010, the data has been enhanced, and we'll continue to review that report data next. So before you now, you will see a Psp detailed report, or an example of what a report would therefore look like. A Psp record is composed of 3 sections. If you can follow my mouse, or my cursor rather, you'll see the first section here is driver information, next is crash activity, and last is inspection activity. Within the driver information section up here, it details the data on the driver, such as the name, their license number, and their license state. In the example presented, John Doe has held 2 licenses in the past 5 years. The crash activity section starts with a summary that totals up the number of crashes, the fatalities, injuries, and towaways in the past 5 years. The crash summary also presents the crash details. It explains the specifics for each crash and includes the name and DOT number for whom the driver was operating at the time of the crash. Many companies use this information to confirm employment history on a driver's application. And you can also see that not preventable crash information is listed here. Lastly, you have the inspection summary, and we'll go more into detail on the next slide. So the inspection summary tallies each inspection and the number of inspections that resulted in out-of-service events. Inspection details specify when and where the driver and truck were during the inspection, as well as any violations that may have been noted. So now let's explore some data on this record. In the second inspection, you'll see that the driver, John Doe, is noted as the co-driver for this inspection. And you'll see that right here. He was not the primary driver. Because he was the co-driver, the vehicle violation is not attributed to John. And of course, this information is something that you would like to be aware of, primarily because at times, sometimes the drivers, they are responsible. But if you do have a driver that has simply been sitting there, you just want to be aware of that. You want to ensure that the person that you are hiring is therefore given a fair chance and fair opportunity based off of all that is entailed within their driver record. And so our Psp reports do provide as much information as possible so that you can ensure that you are making the best hiring decision for that person that you decide to hire. So next, let's talk about Psp and motor vehicle records and what the differences are. An MVR shows the driver's convictions, which is information that states are responsible for monitoring. But it's also important to note that citations, warnings, and tickets yet to be settled in court will not appear on an MVR. A Psp record includes violations collected at the roadside, inspection, or crash information. And it will also show violations regardless of the conviction result. Psp reports will show the original violation when a citation has been adjudicated and has resulted in a conviction of a different charge. Sometimes if someone is comparing a Psp to an MVR and there's a conviction that matches a violation or crash, the dates may not match exactly. So it's important to remember that the court system can take a couple of months for a conviction to be recorded. And again, I just want to specify, we encourage the use of Psp and MVR records. Again, the more information you have on the person that you are hiring, the best. It's for the best. So we don't have any preference, but of course the PSP data does provide a bit more information, as it does include inspection details, it includes crash information, it allows you to know whether or not the driver was the primary driver, the co-driver, as well as not preventable crash information. So how important is PSP? Well, PSP helps FMCSA and you make our roads safe. It helps you get your cargo to its destination safely and on time, and it helps you keep your business running. Screenings help accomplish goals, maintain compliance, and it helps you to ensure that you are protected. And so a great example that we have of just a situation in which a PSP record could have helped to prevent an accident was therefore provided by the National Safety Board, or better known as NTSB. NTSB is an agency that investigates transportation accidents to learn from them and prevent similar future incidents. In 2016, a truck driver was involved in a crash in Chattanooga, Tennessee. As part of the investigation, the NTSB reviewed the driver's PSP record. The NTSB learned that the company who hired the driver did not consult the PSP record during the hiring process. And NTSB therefore believes that if the employer had used PSP, they would not have hired this driver. And also, we have recently learned that according to the National Private Truck Council, NPTC as it's known, it costs over $8,000 to replace a driver. So really, the investment of $10, which is what it costs to pull a driving record, is so minimal in comparison to what it would cost to replace a driver. So now let's talk about how. How do we use PSP? Well, requesting a PSP record is so easy. You can use it requires exact match for 4 data elements, such as driver name, date of birth, driver license number, and driver's license state. When a driver has more than one name or license, you can enter all combinations to get the full PSP results back. So now let's talk about some best practices for requesting a driver record. First best practice to be mindful of is hyphenated names. In this case, the driver has a hyphenated name. PSP records do not include hyphens or other special characters, so you can just smush the 2 names together and exclude any hyphens or spaces. So for the example presented, the first name is Tina, the last name is Smith-Jones. Let's just say, for example, Tina got married, and so now she has both last names. Instead of hyphenating, where it would be Tina Smith-Jones, you would just simply put both names together, Tina Smith-Jones, and then of course include her date of birth, as well as for just more information requiring just Tina, you can list the last name and the license number that applies to that last name. So you'll notice here, it says the first example shows Smith-Jones, one particular license number for Tennessee. And then when her last name was Smith, you'll see a different license. You'll see another license number. And then Jones, another license number, and then Jones Smith. And this is therefore you putting in as much information as you can to ensure that you are pulling all of the information necessary as it applies to Tina Smith-Jones. The next example would be multiple last names. You may get an application from a driver who has had multiple last names in the past 5 years. And again, another example of that would be marriage. So you would simply click the Add License button to include 2 rows of both last names. So here you'll see that we have Laura, first name, last name is Johnson. In this instance, Laura did not hyphen her name. So at one time, her last name, which was Johnson, would therefore have the license number that applies to the last name Johnson, and then her last name prior to being married was Fredrickson. So then, of course, she would include the license number that would apply to the last name being Fredrickson. And then lastly, we have multiple driver's licenses. Similarly, when a driver has held more than one license during the past 5 years, you can add rows to include the additional license numbers and states. So here you can see that Laura Johnson has had multiple license numbers in various different states. Of course, we are aware of the fact that drivers who have been driving, especially for a very long time, may have driven around different states. And so you want to ensure that you're not just pulling the license number or the driver's information for one particular state. You're wanting to ensure that you have as much information as possible from various different states. And so when you are considering hiring a driver, one of the things that you do want to ensure that you ask is, what states have you also been working for or working within? And that way you are therefore putting yourself in the position to receive the necessary information from them regarding just different license numbers and states that apply, so that when you pull the driver's record, you are getting as much information as possible regarding their past 5 years and past 3 years of data. So next we will get into Psp Monitoring. Psp Monitoring was launched in May of 2019. Psp Monitoring is a service primarily for drivers. Psp sends drivers an email at any time, just letting them know that their Psp record has changed. Drivers can subscribe on the Psp website, and Psp Monitoring is free. So very similar to a credit report, where we, of course, want to be aware of any changes that have taken place on our credit report. Just as of recent, drivers have the same option of being made aware regarding any information that has changed on their driver record. It helps them to stay aware, as well as it also helps them to just stay on top of any information that is reported. And of course, and I'll explain a little bit further down the presentation, if there's information that they are made aware of that is inaccurate, they can file a discrepancy and therefore have that information updated to reflect the most accurate information. So now let's talk about Psp not preventable crash data. This is one of our most recent enhancements as of May 1st, 2020. It was an FMCSA initiated, in which FMCSA initiated the Crash Preventability Determination Program, best known as CPDP, which allows 16 eligible crash types to be submitted for review. Crashes that are determined to be not preventable through the CPDP are now notated on Psp records. And crashes on a driver's Psp record that were not preventable may be submitted for review by FMCSA through data queues at dataqueues.fmcsa.dot.gov. And here is where you can see on the Psp sample report where the not preventable crash information would be listed. It would be listed under the second heading, which is crash activity. And right here, where it is bolded in red, is where that information would therefore be listed. So as I shared prior to, FMCSA cares about resolving any discrepancies. FMCSA provides a mechanism for fixing data discrepancies, which is known as data queues. If a driver or motor carrier notices a data inaccuracy, they can file a request to review data and RDR with data queues. Data queues is a centralized system which routes the RDR to the appropriate state for analysis. This also applies to the outcome of an adjudicated citation, in which the driver must submit certified court documentation and inspection details with the RDR. As far as adequate documentation, adequate documentation would therefore include any official documents and scanned copies of certified documentation. This information must be verifiable. And also disclosure and authorization. So disclosure forms. Psp records are governed under the Fair Credit Reporting Act and other laws. The Fcra specifies that before viewing the driver's information, an employer must first disclose to the driver that their Psp record will be reviewed, and secondly, receive the driver's authorization. We make the process so simple by providing you with the appropriate disclosure and authorization form, which is authored by FMCSA. This form can be found under the Contact Us section on the Psp website. It is also important to note that this form cannot be altered, nor may it be combined with any other forms or language. This is consistent with the FCRA. The disclosure and authorization form must be signed by the driver. A compliant form must also be signed by the driver, and it must be either handwritten or an electronic signature, which is fine. The driver must date the form on or before the day the PSP record is requested. And also, as part of our contract with FMCSA, NIC, which is the company that I work for, we are required to audit for disclosure and authorization compliance on a monthly basis. This is not a DOT audit. Each month, a random sampling of companies who use PSP are selected for the audit. When selected, a company is responsible for submitting 1 to 3 disclosures and authorization forms to NIC for review. If your forms are compliant, then you'll be suppressed from audits for at least 1 quarter. Compliant companies are in audits no more than 4 times annually. So now the fun part. It's important, of course, to note and remember that the whole purpose of PSP is because it improves roadway safety. So both the PSP and non-PSP carriers experienced declines in crashes, and driver out of service rates during the study's time period therefore showed that on average, carriers who used PSP reduced their crashes by 8%, and drivers out of service rates fell by 17.2%. And carriers using PSP experienced more improvements in their crash and driver out of service rates. PSP is impactful to the safety of our roads, as well as the safety of your drivers and those that use service. And here are the results listed. So now, how do you enroll in PSP? Well, Psp enrollment is so simple. You can enroll at the Psp website, and that website is listed as www.psp.fmcsa.dot.gov. There is a fee for account holder service as well as a single monthly invoice. As far as the cost of PSP, it costs $10 per driver record requested, and this includes multiple licenses per driver. A company with 1 to 99 power units has a $25 annual sub fee, and motor carriers with 100 plus power units have an annual fee of $100, as well as industry service providers, ISP, they also have an annual sub fee of $100. And if you have any questions regarding PSP, you can email psp.fmcsa@dot.gov. For any enrollment inquiries, you can email psp@egov.com, psphelp@egov.com. The PSP URL is www.psp.fmcsa.dot.gov. Of course, you can follow our Twitter, which is at @psp_help. And if you have any questions or concerns regarding the presentation and the information that I've shared, or just any questions regarding PSP at all, you can feel free to contact me at amara.charles@egov.com. Does anyone have any questions for me?
A couple of questions did come in, but I think you just answered them.
Okay.
The program cost and how to obtain it, we did just answer that.
Yes, $10 per record.
And someone asked if this information is from the clearinghouse. And I'm curious exactly how the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse might be related to this.
So that's a great question. We are not affiliated with the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. We are aware that that is under FMCSA and that is a mandate. However, my company primarily manages the pre-employment screening program. And I believe that the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse does have a site in which any questions and any FAQs can be answered there. But just to specify, PSP and the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse are not associated. They are just both separate FMCSA initiatives. Does that answer the question?
I believe it does.
Okay.
And another question here, carriers under 100, you said the fee was a $25 annual subscription?
Yes, that is correct.
And then it's $10 per driver,
record. Yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Now would be the time to type those into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And we'll give you just a moment to do that. And while we're waiting for that, I just want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. And I want to remind you that PMTA is hosting a DOT compliance seminar on February 23rd. That will begin at 9 a.m. So if you need to sign up for that, you can do so on our website. All right, looks like a question came in. And this question asks, the Psp monitoring is for drivers only, correct?
Yes, that is correct. And again, I just want to, I can add to that. So similar to a credit report, we individually and personally want to be aware of any updates and changes that are made to our credit reports, but it would be very uncomfortable for our employers to be aware of things that are being, any updates to our credit reports. And so therefore a PSP record can only be pulled before you hire a driver. But for a driver, they are able to just maintain and just keep aware of what any changes that are made to their own personal record by signing up for monitoring. And when they sign up for monitoring, it is a free service that is available to them. However, if they decide to pull their own PSP record, which they can do at any time, they as well have to pay a $10 fee. So to sign up, it is free, but to pull the actual report that would help them to know, what information has changed, that would be $10. And then of course, if there are any discrepancies or anything that they see that isn't accurate, they can therefore file a dispute with the data queues. And that information is also listed on our PSP site as well.
All right, and I think this question kind of flows with that answer, this next question here. If someone wanted to review a driver's record multiple times, would the fee be $10 per year, or would you have to pay the $10 fee each time you pulled for a certain driver?
So you are only able to pull for a driver prior to hiring them. You are not able, it is technically against the rules to pull a record after having hired someone. But every single time a record is pulled, it does cost $10.
Okay.
And of course, again, just to ensure that we're aware, every single time you pull a driver's record prior to hiring, they do have to sign that disclosure and authorization form. So they are made aware, which would make them therefore aware that a PSP record is being pulled on their behalf.
All right, that answers that question. Someone has asked if this is mandatory from FMCSA.
Yes, it is mandatory. Well, it is mandatory, but it is an optional choice. So mandatory meaning it is something that is it's great. It's how should I say? It is mandatory in the sense that it is of your best interest to pull a PSP record before hiring a driver, but there is no penalty to you not pulling a driver's record. But you also want to just be mindful of the fact that it costs $10 to pull a driver's record, and it costs over $8,000 to therefore have to replace a driver that may have been hired, that therefore caused an accident, or therefore may not have been the best hire because you may have chosen not to pull that record. So the PSP records allow you to be aware of the person's full history, as well as to also see any opportunities that you may have for training. A lot of times, if you may notice that there are consistent habits on a driver's record, it may put you in that frame of mind to say, hey, this person would still be a good hire, to have a good conversation with them, and also recognize training opportunities, not just for that driver, but then also for your other drivers as well. So all that said, it puts you in that best position to hire the best person for the job, as well as to also be aware of anything else that may be on their record that can therefore create training opportunities for that particular person, as well as your other drivers.
Gotcha. So just to clarify, there's no legal requirement, though it is highly
There is no
recommended
legal
by
requirement, yes.
FMCSA. Yes.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
no legal requirement,
Perfect.
yes.
This next question, there are a lot of questions coming in. Great. The
That's
next
great.
question is, would this program include non-CDL drivers?
Yes, it does.
Excellent. Is there a specific form for permission to pull a PSP report, or does the FCRA form work?
No, there is a specific form that is required to pull, and that information is listed on our PSP site. And if I need to give that information one more time, I can tell you exactly where that form is located. Bear with me one moment. Yeah, it is listed on our PSP site under our FAQ section. And of course, if you are unable to find that information, if it's okay, I will share my screen one more time. That way, people know exactly where to go if they have questions regarding any information they cannot find. So that information, that particular form is listed under our FAQs. It's listed under FAQs on our PSP site. And again, our PSP site is www.psp.fmcsa.dot.gov. There is a particular form that is required. You cannot provide your own form. And if you have any questions regarding being unable to find that form, you can, of course, email me at amara.charles@egov.com, or you can, of course, send any emails to the PSP, the FMCSA PSP email, or our particular, just any enrollment questions that you may have as well, psphelp@egov.com. So you have a few different places that you can reach out to in case you're unable to find what it is you need.
And that psp.fmcsa.dot.gov, that's where someone would go to register
Yes.
their account so that they could pull the
Yes.
PSP report. Perfect.
Yes.
That was one of the questions that just came in. There's a question asking what the monthly maintenance cost is. And it's my understanding that there's not a monthly fee, but an annual fee.
Yes, there's an annual fee, and then just a $10 fee for every driver record that you decide to pull prior to hiring.
And could the PSP record be pulled through a third party? This person says that they use a third party to conduct their background checks.
Yes, it can be.
Okay. That looks like all of the questions that have come in, which is fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for asking questions. And thank you, Amara, for your time this morning.
Of course. And again, if there are, it was a great pleasure to share with you all. And again, if there's any specific questions or anything that you all need at all, you can reach out to me directly. I know the other information is listed here, but sometimes it helps to have a particular contact that you can reach out to. So my email address is listed here, and I will, if there's something I am unaware of, I share it with my team, and I always ensure that there's reach back just to ensure that you have the most accurate information that would help you to make the best decision regarding using the PSP for your hiring purposes.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And we appreciate your time this morning. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much. Take care.